It's our privilege to start off today. Apropos of a symposium on race, immigration, and nationalism, I'd like to recognize, honor, and thank the Tongva people on whose land we gather to discuss these issues. Our panel, as I said, has the honor of opening the symposium today, and we are lucky to bring together such distinguished public intellectuals from our institution to discuss our topic of restoring the white nation, the racialization of immigrants. For this panel, first, we'll start off with Professor Tendai Achume. Professor Achume is Assistant Professor of Law at UCLA School of Law, and whom I'd first like to acknowledge, and both as a colleague and mentor to me, since we have co-taught for 2 semesters now the International Human Rights Clinic. Professor Achume has quickly become a recognized expert on international law and the rights of migrants and refugees. Her JD is from Yale Law School. She clerked at the Constitutional Court of South Africa, and then was awarded a Bernstein International Human Rights Fellowship to work for the Refugee and Migrant Rights Project Unit at Lawyers for Human Rights in Johannesburg. She has written on the refugee crisis in Syria and on structural xenophobic discrimination against refugees, and will speak today about structural xenophobia, the racialization of immigrants in the US, and related processes in Europe and other parts of the world. So we'll start with kind of the most global of the presentations. Then we'll have Professor Lazy Abrego, who is Associate Professor in the Cesar Chavez Department of Chicano Studies here at UCLA. Professor Abrego is a first-generation immigrant from El Salvador, a sociologist whose research and teaching interests are inspired by her family's experiences here in the US. She works on issues of transnational Salvadoran families separated by migration, US immigration policies, and the role of gender and legal status on issues of inequality and integration of Latino immigrants. Professor Abrego will speak on the impact of US policy in Central America on migration and the particular racialization of Central Americans. And finally, we are very privileged to have with us the new dean, as of January of this year, of the Luskin School of Public Affairs, Professor Gary Segura. Professor Segura comes to us from Stanford University, where he was the Morris M. Doyle Centennial Professor of Public Policy, Professor of Political Science, and Professor and former Chair of Chicano Latino Studies. I can't in this short space list all of his accomplishments, but he has done cutting-edge work at the intersection of inequality, race, ethnicity, gender, and sexuality. His research focuses on issues of political representation and social cleavages, the domestic politics of wartime public opinion, and the politics of America's growing Latino minority. Widely published on these issues, the co-author of 4 books, an advisor to members of Congress, an expert witness in the marriage equality cases, and much more. Professor Segura will have the unenviable task of tying everything together and making sense out of the current moment. No, we won't hold you to that. But we do look forward to his thoughts on the construction and policing of racial boundaries and the white majority and its discontents. So without further ado, I will pass it to our first panelist, Professor Achume.